The rain came down in sheets, the kind that turns headlights into useless halos and makes every driver grip the wheel like it's the only thing keeping them alive. On the side of I-40 just west of Nashville, a silver Lexus sat half in the breakdown lane, hazards blinking weakly, wipers frozen mid-swipe. Inside, a woman in a soaked navy suit pounded the steering wheel once, twice, then let her forehead rest against it. 10 miles back, Mike Callahan was fighting his own war with the weather. His 12-year-old Ford pickup rattled like it might finally give up the ghost, but the heater still worked, and that was enough for his daughter Lily, asleep against his shoulder in an oversized hoodie that used to be his. The custody hearing was in 8 hours. 8 hours until a judge he'd never met decided whether he still got to be a dad on weekdays or only every other weekend. He hadn't slept in 2 days. He saw the Lexus the same moment its driver stepped out into the storm, one heel already snapped, waving her arms at passing semis that thundered past without slowing. Something in Mike's chest twisted. He knew that look, panic wearing the last of its dignity. "Daddy." Lily mumbled, waking up. "Go back to sleep, Peanut. Just helping someone." He flicked on his hazards, eased onto the shoulder, and rolled the window down just enough to shout over the rain. "You okay?" The woman's hair was plastered to her face, mascara running in thin black rivers. "Battery's dead. Phone's dead." AAA said 2 hours, maybe 3. Mike glanced at the clock on his dash, 11:47 p.m. The hearing was at 9 a.m. sharp. He had maybe 4 hours to get home, shower, put on the one clean button-down he owned, and drive downtown. 4 hours to look like a man who had his life together. He should have kept driving. Instead he heard himself say, "I've got jumper cables." She looked at him like he'd offered her a winning lottery ticket. "You're sure?" He was already climbing out. The woman, Elena Ramirez, though he wouldn't learn that for hours, popped the hood while Mike wrestled with cables in the downpour. Lightning cracked overhead. Lily watched from the passenger seat, wide awake now, nose pressed to the glass. "Red to dead, black to brick," Mike muttered, the old rhyme his own dad had taught him 25 years ago. Sparks jumped. The Lexus coughed, then roared to life. Elena sagged against the fender in relief. "I owe you my life." Mike wiped rain from his eyes. "Just get home safe, ma'am." She glanced at the pickup, at Lily's small silhouette in the window, at the faded, Callahan's Auto Repair magnet barely clinging to the door. Something softened in her face. "What's your name?" she asked. "Mike." "Mike Callahan." "Mike Callahan," she repeated, like she was storing it somewhere important. "Thank you." He gave her a tired salute and climbed back into the truck soaked to the bone. Lily handed him an old McDonald's napkin to dry his face. "You're a good person, Daddy," she said quietly. Mike started the engine. "Trying to be, kiddo." He never saw the woman watch him pull away, never saw her memorize his license plate through the rain. 8 hours later, Mike stood in courtroom 3B of the Davidson County Courthouse in his one good shirt, sleeves a little too short now, feeling every inch the failure Sarah's lawyer kept calling him. "Mr. Callahan earns an inconsistent income," the lawyer sneered, "works unpredictable hours, lives in a one-bedroom apartment above his failing garage. Hardly an ideal environment for a sensitive 10-year-old girl." Mike's hands shook at his sides. The garage wasn't failing, it was surviving, same as him. He'd kept the lights on after Sarah walked out, kept food on the table, kept Lily in dance classes even when it meant eating ramen for a week. But none of that sounded like enough when it came out of a lawyer's mouth. The judge hadn't looked up from her notes once. Honorable Elena M. Ramirez, the nameplate read. She was younger than he expected, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back severely and eyes that looked like they'd seen every sad story Nashville had to offer. Mike's lawyer, a public defender who'd clearly pulled an all-nighter, stood up. "Your Honor, Mr. Callahan may not have money, but he has stability. Lily has lived with him full-time since the separation. Her teachers, her pediatrician, even Mrs. Callahan's own mother have submitted letters." The opposing lawyer cut in. "Letters don't pay for braces, Your Honor." Mike closed his eyes. Braces. Another thing he was behind on. Judge Ramirez finally spoke, voice calm but firm. Mr. Callahan, approach the bench. Alone. Mike's heart hammered so hard he barely heard the gavel. He walked forward on legs that didn't feel like his. When he reached the bench, the judge looked at him, really looked, and something flickered across her face. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "Do you always rescue strangers on the side of the highway, Mr. Callahan?" Mike blinked. The courtroom spun. What? Silver Lexus. I-40 West. Around midnight. Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "You had a little girl asleep in your truck." His mouth went dry. "That was you." Elena Ramirez glanced at the packed gallery, then back at him. "Step back, please." She cleared her throat and addressed the room in her official voice. After reviewing the evidence, the affidavits, and the child's own wishes as expressed in camera last week, she paused, and Mike felt the floor drop out from under him. "I am granting primary physical custody to the father, Michael Callahan. Joint legal custody, with liberal visitation to the mother. Ms. Callahan will pay child support commensurate with her income. Court is adjourned." The gavel fell like a gunshot. Mike stood frozen. Sarah's lawyer started yelling about appeals. Sarah herself looked stunned. And Judge Ramirez, Elena, was already gathering her robes, avoiding his eyes. He found her 20 minutes later in the hallway outside the courtrooms, sipping coffee from a paper cup that shook slightly in her hand. "Your Honor," he started. "Elena," she corrected quietly. "In here, I'm Elena. I don't understand. You could have recused yourself." "I thought about it." She stared into her coffee. "All night, actually. I sat in my driveway until 3 a.m. thinking about bias and ethics and whether kindness should disqualify someone from justice." She met his eyes. "Then I thought about my own father. He was a mechanic too. Raised 3 of us alone after Mom died. Worked double so we could eat. People judged him every day for the grease under his nails." Mike swallowed hard. "I looked at your file," she continued. "You've never missed a school conference. You've never been late on rent, even when the garage was slow. Lily's therapist wrote that the child feels safe and deeply loved." Her voice cracked, just barely. "I decided the system could use a little less impartiality and a lot more humanity." He couldn't speak. Tears burned the backs of his eyes, tears he hadn't let fall in front of anyone since the night Sarah left. Elena set the coffee down. "You didn't know who I was last night. You helped me anyway. That's the kind of man I want raising children in my courtroom." Mike found his voice. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough." "It's enough." She smiled, small and tired and real. "Go hug your daughter. She's waiting by the elevators." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Your heel, the one that broke. You okay?" She laughed, a surprised sound. "I threw those shoes in the trash the second I got home. Some things aren't worth saving." Mike nodded. Some things were. 6 months later. The garage had a new sign, Callahan and Daughter Auto Repair. Lily had painted the and daughter part herself in bright purple. Business was better. Word gets around when a judge quietly recommends you to every lawyer she knows. On a warm Saturday in May, Mike was under a minivan when familiar heels clicked across the concrete, new ones this time, sensible black pumps. Elena stood in the bay doorway holding 2 sweet teas from the corner store. "Thought you might be thirsty," she said. Lily came running from the office, grease on her cheek like war paint. "Miss Elena. Dad said I could help with your oil change today." Mike slid out from under the van, wiping his hands on a rag. "You don't have to keep bringing us business, you know." "I'm not," Elena said, eyes dancing. "I really do need an oil change." And she glanced at Lily, then back at him. "I was hoping maybe the mechanic would let me buy him dinner afterward. To say thank you. Properly this time." Mike looked at his daughter, who was making the most exaggerated thumbs up in human history. He smiled, the kind that started in his chest and took its time reaching his face. "Yeah," he said. "I think he'd like that." Outside, the Tennessee sun was setting gold and easy, the way it does when the world finally decides to be kind. Sometimes the people who hold your fate in their hands are the same ones you pulled out of the rain without a second thought. And sometimes, when you're very, very lucky, they decide to stay.